Now we turn our attention tonight to the horrific murder of 22-year-old Gavin O'Connor, who was killed near Carrickmacross while sleeping in his car after a music festival 3 years ago. It was an incredibly violent killing where he was attacked with 4 rocks and then run over with his own car. In February just gone, Conor McClelland, also 22, was sentenced to life for Gavin's murder. Well, yesterday I went to speak to Gavin O'Connor's heartbroken parents, Helena and Jerry, in their home. Helena, tell me about Gavin. Tell me about the kind of person he was.
Gavin was the most laid-back person I think I have ever come across, Miriam. I used to tell him, you're that laid-back, you'll fall over, Gavin. He just was such a gentle, laid-back chap.
And he was a great musician, wasn't he?
He was a brilliant musician. Taught himself, took a few lessons in the early days, and he just had it in him, a passion for it, and he got better and better all the time.
So take me back to that day and how he was in Carrickmacross and why he ended up being in his car.
Carrickmacross every June Bank Holiday weekend have a music festival. Gavin attended it every year. The band Climax, which Gavin was a member of, played at it every year. And he was due to play on the Saturday night. So Gavin's plan was on Saturday he would spend the day setting up the sound system. Now, Gavin had arranged with his friend Harry that he would stay in Harry's house. But when they were on the street after 3 a.m, Harry said to him, are you ready? We'll head home. And Gavin turned around to Harry and he said, oh, I'm okay. Now, in my head, I think Gavin would have thought, well, if I go home and stay in Harry's, I won't get out of bed in the morning. Whereas if I sleep in the car, I'll be up and I'll get the sound system set up. That is the only thing I can think of that made him change his mind about staying in Harry's. And 10 to 7 Saturday morning, the phone rang. And it was Aoife, Gavin's girlfriend. And she said to me that John McMahon, Gavin's friend, was after ringing her and saying that Gavin was gone to Drogheda in an ambulance, seriously injured. And that's all she knew. We got to Drogheda, we were taken straight into the family room and Aoife was already there. And the doctor came in and he told us Gavin was not going to make it. They asked us, would we like to see Gavin? And we said yes. And he said, well, he's not a pretty sight at the moment. Because of the extent of his injuries, the blood is running out of his eyes, his nose, his mouth and his ears. So myself, Jerry and Aoife went to the doors and the nurse pushed it open. And when we seen the state of Gavin's face, we turned back. We tried a second time and we turned back. And on the third attempt, we went in. And Gavin's face was a total and utter mess. It was black, it was purple, it was yellow, it was swollen beyond belief. He had a big bulge sticking out from the side of his temple. He just was horrendous looking.
His head was tied back together.
But it was Gavin and we knew it was Gavin. And we talked to him and we hugged him and we kissed him and we were there. All his friends were outside. Earlier, his friend John, who had rang Aoife, had come to me outside the hospital and he said, Helena, there's something not right about this. He said, I was at the roadside and Gavin has no shoes on him and they're not on the roadside.
So what happened then, as far as
Going by the CCTV coverage that we seen at the trial, at 3:20, we seen Gavin come walking up the street, come round the corner and jog back to his car.
We nearly said to him, go back, Gavin, go back, because it seemed so real, but we could stop him and come back to his car.
So take us through, Jerry, what actually happened to
From
Gavin.
the evidence that was produced, it appears to be that Conor McClelland was walking, the last man standing in Carrickmacross that night, and he needed a lift home. And he would have broken into Gavin's car. He seen Gavin asleep in the car, broke in, took the keys out of his pocket and his phone, started the car and drove off out of town towards his Doonan, more or less to home, towards his own area. And someplace around Creevy Lake, he was supposed to stop the car, rang a fella with Gavin's phone, and he told him that he was after stealing the car in Carrickmacross and the person that owns it is asleep in the back of it. What'll I do? Can I come over your area or something? We sorted out. And this guy said, no, leave him back where you got him. Leave it back. And he said, I can't because my fingerprints are all over it.
No, but before that, darling, he said, if he wakens, I will have to hit him with it.
He said, if he wakens up, I'm going to have to hit him with a rock. So he would have drove on then to the far side of Lisdoonan, and this is where the assault is supposed to have taken place. He assaulted Gavin with a rock the size of your fist, to the extent that he possibly knocked Gavin out or left him severely dazed. But he dropped that rock. He was able to go to the ditch and pull a rock out of it the size of your shoe. Got into the car, knelt on the driver's seat and continued to bash Gavin's head till he dropped that rock. He then went back to the ditch. He got a second rock the size of your shoe and got into the car and continued to beat the head of Gavin with that rock, to the extent that he lost it. And he went back to the ditch and he got a third rock the size of your shoe. He got into the car and he kept beating till he lost that rock. Mary Cassidy said that Gavin's face had been battered that much that his eye sockets were smashed. McClellan said that Gavin got out of the car himself and was standing on the road with his head covered in blood and his hands at his side. So McClellan got into Gavin's car, drove up the road, turned the car around and drove straight at him to make it look like a hit and run. He hit Gavin with such a force that he drove him up in the air, dropped him on the top of the car and onto the side of the road. And then he proceeded with his getaway plan to go up the north to burn the car. But that failed. That's what he done to our Gavin.
Did it help at all, Helena, that Colin McClelland got a life sentence for the murder of Gavin? Did that go in some way to helping you both?
We were very pleased that he was found guilty of murder. It doesn't take away our life sentence, Miriam. And to me, life should mean life. Colin McClelland will walk out of that prison, an average 17.2 years is life. He has already served 3. He will walk out of that prison young enough to carry on with his life. Myself and Jerry will bring this to the grave with us.
The word murder is too mild a word for what this man done to Gavin. He horrifically slaughtered him. And the guy that done that should never see the light of day again, and he should be serving 30 years plus. The crime that happened, the worst crime to be committed in years on our son, and nobody knew anything about it. Nobody was covering it.
The Northern Standard newspaper ran the trial from start to finish and did a very accurate account, and that was the only media or coverage that we got was the Northern Standard. The Meath Chronicle did a bit on it. Not a mention did we get on television or radio.
What impact has all of this had on your lives?
I am so sick every day. Sometimes to even brush my hair or brush my teeth is an ordeal. Sometimes to even just stand up is an ordeal. I can't see a future.
I'll be sick forevermore. I'm haunted with the visions of this fella yielding them rocks down on top of my Gavin's head. That's the visions that I'm left with, is haunting me. The first thing in the morning and the last thing at night.
Like our priest told me that there's a black cloud over the town. He said everybody is totally heartbroken for you, but nobody knows what to say to you.
We lost our second son, Patrick, there last November.
Patrick was our rock, Miriam. From Gavin had died, Patrick was our total and utter rock.
And he died in a road accident?
Road traffic accident.
They're your only 2 sons?
Only 2 sons.
2 boys.
We have Judith and her husband and children left. They live in Australia.
Final question. I know you found it difficult to do this interview, but you want to give a message out to people, don't you?
Yes. If there's anything to be done to the justice system in this country, will you please do it? Right, our prisons are full, but you have people in there for not paying their TV licence or stupid things for being on the runway at Shannon or whatever. Lock up the people that should be locked up. The people with the convictions.
I'd like to say to the parents of Ireland and further afield to tell their children, no matter how young or how old they are, that they love them every day. And I'd like to say to the young people of Ireland that's driving the roads, not to send a message home to their parents that we got. Unfortunately, Mr. and Mrs. O'Connor, your son wasn't wearing a seatbelt. If this programme saves one person from being murdered or one person from being killed on the road, it'll be worth it. It'll be worth it.
Jerry and Helena, thank you very much for speaking to us, and I'm so sorry for what happened to your sons.
Thank you very, very much, Miriam.
Thank you.
That was Jerry and Helena O'Connor speaking to me in their home near Nobber on the Cavan border about the murder of their son Gavin. Well, after the break, the significance of today's historic visit.